I'm Mumbles Brad Klein, and this is my story. It started when I was little. Well, it actually started with the family. Everybody drug addicts and alcoholics. For sure alcoholics. And then, so when I was younger, I got drunk the first time at like 6 years old because my family was like swingers and partiers and all this stuff, and so they built a bar in our living room. So my sister and I used to go in there and sip on R&R when everybody else was all drunk and they didn't notice you. And but at 6 years old, my mom had people over and they were all partying and stuff, and they were betting me. I bet you can't drink 3 Budweisers, and so I pounded these 3 Budweisers for $3. And then they bet me I couldn't do it again. So six of them, about the fourth, fifth one, it started down my front and whatever. And so obviously I ended up drunk. I was only 6 years old, and then I'm laying in bed and like, Mom, why is the bed spinning and all this kind of stuff. It's like still a story. But so 6 years old is the first time I got drunk. And, as the years went by, a little here, there, whatever, it wasn't like a big issue at that point. But, I was introduced. Well, as I got older, and got to knowing more people and hanging out with kids and teenagers, whatever, started partying more, the typical high school and all that. But at 11, well, let me back up. At like 8, my mom left my stepdad. And my stepdad was, I thought my dad is what I was told. And but he was abusing my sister and beating the shit out of me and my mom and that kind of stuff. And they were the swingers and stuff. So we left his ass and we went to Washington State from Maryland, and we were here like, I don't know, like 3 weeks. Well, we walked down the street, and then my mom's like, well, by the way, that's not your dad, and your dad is this guy, gives her his name, and we're going to go see if he's home right now. Apparently we moved in right down the street from him, and we're walking by, and as we get there, he's walking out to check his mail. Well, there's my real dad, like all of a sudden. But I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, what the hell is really going on, But so I met him like 4 times in 3 weeks, and then the asshole came and got us from Maryland and took us back to Maryland. Well, of course, my dad was trying to get a hold of me and all this other stuff or whatever, and my mom fucking wasn't having it because she always thought he would just take me or whatever. And so I got fucked out of that, basically. And then we finally left the asshole in Maryland and went to Arizona at 10, had my 10th birthday on the road. And then the 11th birthday, like 3 days before my 11th birthday, I found out that my real dad, there went all my fucking hopes and dreams of my real dad. I found my real dad, this asshole ain't my dad, Well, yeah, so much for that. So apparently my dad had a barbershop, and these guys stole his checks, and they were cashing his checks, and he was going to prosecute him or whatever, and they took him out in the woods and shot him point blank to the neck and face with shotguns like 3 times and stuff, and let him to rot. They found him eventually, and then used his teeth because he was deteriorated so bad to find out who he was. And then, like I said, Mom finally tells me. I'm like, I'm only 10 now. I'm almost 11, like 3 days before my 11th birthday. Well, that same year, my mom and my sister and were dating these guys that were brothers or whatever, and apparently they're doing cocaine or whatever. So at 11, I smoked some joints of weed and did some lines of cocaine, and was drinking. Mom was always about the drinking. She was okay. I'd rather get you drunk at home and know where you're at than have you out doing whatever. The old school theory. But so yeah, that started my drug life at that point. Because then of course I wanted to keep getting high. I wanted to keep smoking weed. So I mean, to the point where we would even smoke fucking alfalfa and shit. Like trying to get high. Just fucking thinking we're gonna get high, but never got high. So, anyways, as the years go on, I end up in high school and whatever, and whenever I could, I would smoke, and whenever I could drink, I would drink, and then for like my 16th birthday, mom bought a keg, and we went out to the woods and out to the river, Arizona, had a big old party and stuff, and the alcoholic I am, man, I'm underneath the keg, fucking just, and like I was like the first one to pass out at my own party. I missed my own fucking party because I'm such a raging alcoholic. I fucking had to drink as much as I could, thinking, whatever, and ended up passing out. So I missed the whole fucking party, man. But then there's plenty of other keg parties and shit like that. Cops come, we're carrying the kegs through the woods and trying to escape, and end up rolling a car and stuff. And I've always been fortunate, man. Like I get in accidents or whatever, and I'd walk away with just bruises, and everybody else be like fucked up. My mom wrapped a car around a telephone pole one day, and she had to be life flighted out. My sister went to the hospital, and I walked away with bruises. It was fucking weird, dude. So now being sober almost 2 years and stuff, and my higher power been looking out for me my whole life. I just took a long time to find it. Like I went to a lot of different avenues, thinking a lot of different kind of religious and all this kind of stuff or whatever, but it would never fit until, I was in and out of jail a lot because I eventually ended up strung out on drugs and stuff, and in the early 90s and stuff, and started slamming dope. But I'd like done a little bit of little drugs here and there along the way, a little crystal or crank, or like back then with black beauties and cross tops and stuff like that, so I'd done all that kind of stuff too, but I never was one for like pills. I didn't even like Tylenol or any of that, so we'd always crush them up and snort them, fuck that, taking a pill, we're gonna snort that shit, But so anyways, I ended up trying these people that I was hanging out with. I don't want to call them my friends because they were just common druggies, I guess you could call it, but they were slamming dope, and my curiosity killed the cat, man. I had them hit me up with one, and then the next weekend I did it again, and I did it every day I could for 8 years, selling it and all that bullshit, and running fucking chemicals and who knows, all kinds of dumb shit, and then to the point where they were literally following me. I wasn't just paranoid; they really were following me, And ended up leaving Vancouver, Washington, and went to California in '96, and they followed me all the way down to California too, man. But I'd stayed clean for like 10 months. But I was hanging on to that every day, man. Like I had 30 days, I had 60 days, I had 90 days, I had 45, whatever, hanging on. And I just felt like I was hanging on to that last hit, looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but that's how I feel now looking back, And so I lasted about 10 months, and I went back out. And it took me like 3 years to come back out, And so I quit doing dope, and I just was smoking weed and a lot of that Mexican dirt weed, what it was. Sifting seeds, man, But it helped me get off the needle, it helped me get off the drugs, and I never did any narcotics ever since. July 24th, 99 was the last time I did any narcotics at all. And then 4 months later, I still went to prison. Well, in prison for selling drugs, But I went to prison, and stuff was available, but I never used it again, man. Like when I quit, I was done, So I got out January 15th, 2001, and I bought a little pager, and then right then is when the cell phones came out. So I got a little Nokia and imported my number to the Nokia from the pager, and I've had the same number ever since, But I never looked back on doing drugs, but I still sold the shit for like 5 years after that. I got out of prison and I sold drugs, and I'm a tattoo artist by trade. And I got more reliant on selling the drugs than I was tattooing. And next thing you know, there was a big crash with the meth. We couldn't get no drugs nowhere, like the Mexicans cut off the whole fucking border, man. And you couldn't find it nowhere. And so here I am, a $500 a month rent for a room. and can't even afford that because I was more reliant on selling these drugs than I was on my natural skills, you know. And so I just ended up getting married, got divorced, and it was all bad, you know. I was just fresh out of prison and super racist, and my wife at the time was half Japanese, half German, but you know, she was cheating around on me on black people and stuff, you know, to put it nicely, what I thought back then, you know. But yeah, so that didn't go over very well with me. I was super prejudiced, racist, and all that bullshit when I got out of prison, you know, because you know, in there, you got to stick up for your own, or else you know you get fucked up, you know, you know. So we did stand up and all that, and I earned my stripes, is what they call it, you know. So I got white pride on the back of my legs because I already had tattoos on my arms, or else I would have been there too, you know. But anyways, yeah, I ended up getting divorced and just drowning my sorrows, you know, drinking half gallon of Jack Daniels and Coke, or else a half gallon of tequila and orange juice. And then I would drink Heineken in between. Coffee when I woke up, and never any water or any of that stuff, you know. And then, so eventually ended up getting a little umbilical hernia or whatever, and I go to the urgent care thinking, oh my God, my guts are going to pop out or something, you know. And obviously they didn't, but I went in there and I was all blowed up and didn't realize it, but I had first stages of psoriasis, liver cirrhosis, or whatever you call it, you know. And so I had to stop drinking at that point. And then that was like 2009. By the time I figured that out, it was 2005 when I got that divorce. And so I'd been drinking that whole time, crazy like that, you know. And it fucked me up in my liver and all that. I had a whole bunch of water, swelled up, couldn't even tie my shoes because my belly was in the way and stuff, you know. But I quit, and then I moved from California back up to Vancouver, Washington, and I started doing holistic. I met this girl, and I became like well, pescatarian now, but it was vegan, vegetarian back then, almost a raw diet, you know. Watched a whole bunch of documentaries and stuff, and got educated on all that, and so now I'm like, man, you know, it's like one of those things. Once you know, how do you not know? You know, so I don't eat meat still because of it, but I was able to do like teas and stuff like dandelions and milk thistle and that kind of stuff, and it fixed my liver. Well, of course, that was green light to start partying again, you know. So I started partying again, and then I drink like a pot of coffee in the morning or whatever normally, and then all of a sudden it become a half a pot of coffee, and I just, man, I had a kegerator and stuff, and because I used to have a tavern too, and a heavy metal venue and a tavern and tattoo shop and a vegan vegetarian restaurant, all this shit all in one spot, you know. And so I had this kegerator, like I said, and so I just wake up, need my coffee, and then finally I was only drinking a half a pot, and then straight to that kegerator. And you know, the kids go to school at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd start drinking until I went to bed, whatever time that happened to be. And then so I ended up, you know, messing up my liver again, you know. But along the way, I ended up having all these kids and baby mamas and all this stuff, you know, and shit happens, man, you know. And being an alcoholic and a drug addict and all that, you know, these relationships didn't last and stuff. So it's like, I got all these kids. I got 7 kids, you know, and 6 baby mamas. I had a boy and a girl with their first wife, and I was like barely turned 18, had a kid, and that was 89, you know, and then it just had, you know, as we go along, you know. So 36-year-old right now, all the way down to now I have a 4-year-old, just turned 4. And yeah, it's been in the road, man. It's crazy because you know you go through all this stuff or whatever, and you know drugs and alcohol sure didn't help my story at all because I was slamming dope and I moved in with these people, and they kicked me out and kept all my stuff and threw away all my stuff, all my paperwork. I sold whatever they could of mine, you know, whatever. And in all my paperwork and stuff back then, we had like the little jailhouse fucking phone book things, you know, like a little red covered thing or whatever, you know. And there wasn't no cell phones and all that back then. So in that little jailhouse phone book was all my kids' addresses, phone numbers, all the shit. So I lost contact at that point, you know. And then of course you pay child support, you can request them to get a hold of you, whatever, through the child support stuff or whatever. So I'd write these letters or whatever, and then of course, they would give it to the mom, and then the mom has the option to get back to you or not. And of course, oh, I never talked shit about you, but yet they never fucking got a hold of me until later. Then the kids tell me how much shit they really talked about me, But along the way, it's been all this heartache and doom and gloom and, fuel for the fire, so to speak, So you want to not feel, you want to get numb, you want to, party and escape the life you knew or know, all the shit that's happened to you or whatever, And so I was loaded for a long time, man, and really, really, like, super drunk all the time, like, for years. Like, I started doing tattoo conventions in 06, and we would travel all over. 08 is when the recession hit in Cali, and there was no money. I had a tattoo shop and all this stuff. I just opened up my first tattoo shop, and the recession hit. So we were gone all the time, like 2 or 3 tattoo conventions a month all over the United States. Like, I was gone all the time. To the point when I moved from Cali to Washington, and I almost felt like I didn't really belong anywhere because I had traveled so much, And but the thing is, like, I would do all these shows, and I always had to have my alcohol. I always had to have my beers, man. I had to have beers, always. And I did all this stuff, and, like, it's funny because, like, my friends would tell me, like, I would had a buddy that, and we would do all the stuff to cut the overhead and make money and stuff, So we'd share everything. The rental, the motel, the booth money, whatever, cut everything in half, basically. But we would do all this shit, man, and he would tell me about all this stuff, and the drunk I was, I don't fucking remember none of it. A lot of it, like, oh yeah, I did that. Damn, that sounds like that was a good time, but I don't fucking remember, So I just listened to their stories of what we did and what I did, and go from there, because it's all blurred to me, man. I remember doing stuff and whatever, but not to the extent they tell me. And the irony of it is all, is that, you think you're living, you think you're partying, you think you're having a good time, and you think all this stuff, but when it comes down to it, like, I did all this stuff and don't remember shit. So was it really a good time? Was it really a big party? Was it really worth it at that point? Being sober now, I look back and say no, because I could have remembered all these different places I've been. I've been all over the fucking place, Even before I started doing the conventions, I built this truck. I have an 88 GMC slammed to the ground and stuff, and I just put a brand new motor in, all hot rodded out and all this. And I drove all over the place, 12,500 miles in 5 weeks. I drove by myself and just went from one hotel or house to another and did these tattoo parties and stuff, And once again, man, I just, drinking and smoking and all that, and most of it's a fucking blur too, I remember driving and I remember going and feeling free as fuck. And I didn't even want to come home. I was going back to Cali at that point, I never even wanted to go back, but the reality is I had to, And then, and so back to what I was saying, I moved to Vancouver in 2010. I fixed my liver, started drinking hardcore again, man, like really bad. And so then I was up to drinking all day long, like I was talking about the coffee and stuff, And next thing you know, man, I get in a really bad motorcycle accident. And I always had beers on my bike and stuff too, Like I was saying, I always had to have my beer. Even with the kegerator home, I would live out in Stevenson, an hour from Vancouver, and Vancouver is where I had to go to refill my keg. So I'd go to the little store they call Main Street. I'd get a 6-pack. So I'd have to go buy beer to go get my beer, basically, So I'd be drinking the whole way there, whole way back, I drank no matter what I was doing, no matter where I went, no matter what. I was tethered to the fucking bottle, man. And I had to have it. Like, I had to talk about preoccupation, man. I had to plan the whole thing, because if I didn't have enough alcohol to do whatever the fuck it was I was going to do, I didn't do it. One of the things that stands out, like, I was in a meeting, I don't know, probably a year ago now or something, and somebody was telling their story or whatever, and they're like, I used to drink to be social, and then next thing you know, I'm isolated, drinking alone, and that's kind of how I was, because if I didn't have my beers and I couldn't plan for it, I didn't go. I'd rather just stay at home and made sure I had enough, you know. And so the old lady and the kids and stuff would go and do all kinds of stuff, and I would miss out on a lot because I was tethered to that fucking beer, to that bottle, you know. So I got in that motorcycle accident, and I lost 3 toes, and got 2 plate in my face, 15 stitches here, fractured both sides of my skull, chipped my spine, fucking all this bullshit, you know. And I woke up in the hospital, and you know, they say you see the bright lights or whatever, you know. So when I woke up, I didn't even know if I was alive or dead, to be honest. I was like, you know, and apparently I blank stared at my old lady for like 2 days. Got a lot of head injuries and shit, you know, like to the point when I got out of the hospital, I was like doing a self check to make sure I didn't fucking lose a screw or something, you know, like fucking lose a marble, you know. But I was really worried about it because like fucked up my teeth like a crackhead. And now they have fucking fallen out like I was doing dope or something, you know. I lost more teeth out of that fucking accident than I did when I was doing dope, you know, because I had that shit fall out like molars and stuff would fall and chip, and my gums fucking grew over them and stuff. I went to prison and had to have that shit surgically removed in prison. Let me tell you, that was an adventure. I could feel my whole jaw pulling these teeth out and shit. Like holy fuck, you know. But yeah, I don't know, man. I lost a lot of shit and been through a whole lot of abuse and fucking, you know, all that bullshit. You know, I wasn't touched, but you know, the babysitter and I had gotten together though when I was 6. And she was 16, and I messed around with her or whatever, you know. And but as a boy, you know, I don't know. It just didn't seem like it was as detrimental as being a girl getting touched. You know what I mean? It didn't seem like that. But I mean, as an adult now and a mature adult and with a lot of kids too and all that, I look at it and it's like, man, that fucking sure the hell didn't help my situation, you know. The fucking swinger parties and the bar in our living room and getting me drunk at, you know, 6, and smoking weed and do cocaine at 11. It started for, you know, quite the life, man, let me tell you. And once I found out that this dude wasn't my dad and my real dad was murdered and that little hopes and dreams got shattered, like I didn't listen to nobody, you know. And any other guy that was in my life, as far as like my mom, you know, he was just there to do my mom, you know, 'cause I didn't give a fuck about you. You ain't my dad. You ain't telling me shit. And so I was very independent. I didn't have anybody telling me anything. So I just did whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and fuck you didn't like it. You know? I didn't care. Courts, probations, moms, school, principals, whatever, you know. I didn't care. I did whatever I wanted to do. It was weird because a lot of like other kids and stuff would like looked up to me almost because I could do whatever I wanted, you know. And I always looked at them and scratched my head and wondered why, you know, because I didn't realize that, you know, other people had structure in their life. Other people had to do certain things or whatever. Where, you know, I'm 6'2", you know, my mom's 4'11", and so by 14 I was towering over her already, anyways, you know. And so she really wasn't able to make me do anything, you know. But I was in the era of the tough love and all that when it came out and all the bullshit. So I was definitely a victim of that shit, you know. You know? I don't think it ever helped, man. I look back and then like doing other people's yard work and all that shit never helped me. People I didn't even know, you know. Like, oh, you're gonna go over here and you're gonna pull weeds and this these people's house because you've been a bad boy. Yeah, whatever. That's how I felt, you know. Fuck it, I'll go do your bullshit. And so I did, but then I'd go back and nothing ever changed. It never helped me at all, you know. Not at all. I always was on my own mission, man. And you know, now, so I damn near die on that motorcycle accident, like I said. And then 8 months later, I got a DUI out of that. And then 8 months later, I got another DUI. And then I blew up to whatever, you know, at that point too, you know, riding my motorcycle too. And then a few months later, I got another DUI. So I got 3 DUIs in 2.5 years. And that last one, like, I don't know what really turned the light on, but the only thing I can think of is I had my stepdaughter and my 4-year-old now, he's 4, he wasn't then, but I had my kids in the car, and they gave me 2 counts of child endangerment, along with the DUI, along with driving on suspended because I had these other DUIs, and then some bullshit fucking speeding. It was bullshit, but whatever. So I mean, the only thing I can think of is that the kid and child endangerment stuff is the only thing I can think of that really like turned the light on. You know, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. You know, but it was crazy because I went to jail and I was like, man, I need an inpatient. I need an inpatient. You know. And then, of course, the alcoholic and drug addict I get out and I'm like trying to plead with the counselor that, oh, no, just outpatient. So, like, I need an inpatient. And then I get to the counselor and I'm pleading, no, I'm just outpatient. You know? 'Cause as an addict or an alcoholic, I always want to take the easy way out, is what we think, you know? And he was adamant, nope, you're going to inpatient. So it actually did me a favor. But the real thing is I had a few drinks before I went, you know, it took about a month to get in there. And so, you know, my old lady and her friend were drinking, and I'm like, man, I really want to drink, you know? And she's like, but you're an alcoholic. And in my head, I was like, well, fuck you. You're an alcoholic too. You're drinking too, bitch. Fuck you. You know? But, so it really set the fuel on the fire, though. Like, I was determined to get a drink now. You know, he didn't set me out. So I went and got a 12-pack of IPAs because that was my beer of choice or whatever, you know. And man, I got like really drunk off this shit, man. Like, and I was in bed by like 11:30. You know, had a friend come over, and me and his buddy were just kicking in and drinking these beers or whatever. And man, I could drink 15 or more before I went to jail. And all of a sudden, you know, it only been like maybe a week I was out of jail, and man, I was fucked up. Like, that shit got me drunk. But I didn't like it. I didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel right. It was not appealing at that point. But the alcoholic, I had to get drunk. I had to have a drink, you know, like they set the fuel on the fire and I had to fulfill it, you know, so I did. And it was not what I left, you know, the party I left versus that party that night was not the same at all, you know. And, so there's a couple other times I drank before I went to treatment, and one of them was right before I went to treatment. I went, like I said, I live an hour away from Vancouver. Well, Vancouver is where the train is to go to Tacoma, and Tacoma is where the treatment was. So I went and stayed at my friends in Vancouver so I could be up at 6:15 to catch this damn train, you know. Well, it was the same place I always drank at before. I always go over there and we drink, and then I had a couple beers left over, and they'd always just hang on to my beers because they knew I was coming back to drink more, you know. So I get over there, and they had a couple of them left from the last time I was there, and I went and bought a 6-pack. And normally I'd have drank all 8 beers like it wasn't shit, you know. But I drank a beer, and about halfway through this next beer, and I just dumped that shit out and went to treatment the next day. A 28-day program, you know. Well, while I was in the treatment, I learned a lot of like what alcohol really does to you. And then I learned about fentanyl and all this other shit that's out there. And, you know, it's July 24th, 99, last time I did any narcotics. So I didn't even know about all this shit. And so I'm learning about all this stuff that's really going on these days, you know, oxys and the fentanyl and all this shit. You know, that was way past my time is the way I look at it, you know. But man, I got educated on all this stuff, man, and I'm just like really feeling like I dodged a bullet by quitting in 99, you know. And but the alcohol and stuff, I really, you know, you think, oh, it's just alcohol. Well, just alcohol should not be in your body at all, like not one drop. Our body is not designed for alcohol at all, and so it, you know, it takes away things like your sex drive. You know, you can't get it hard, or you lose it, or whatever, you know, because of alcohol. You know, it fucks up a lot of stuff, man. You know, you think you would be more available for more information these days. As available as alcohol is, you think there'd be a lot more information to go with it too, but of course not, because it's socially acceptable. And yeah, we got to go celebrate. It means we got to go get twisted, you know. Then you feel like shit, throw up, fucking all the bullshit, you know. But I don't know, man. Getting out of the treatment, and you know, it's been almost 2 years now, and that last half a beer I poured out was the last time I drank. And I'm a stepdad too, and I went through some pretty horrific shit, man. Like the stepdaddy's nightmare. The stepdaughter had her cousin from her dad's side. Daddy was touching her, and that's why he wasn't in her life. And then, but she didn't know this, and she's only 9 now. But she talked to her cousin. Her cousin had talked to the dad. The dad was telling her to tell my stepdaughter that he didn't do it, and that mommy's lying, and he loves her, and all this bullshit. Well, she thinks that she's gonna get rid of me, and daddy's gonna come home. So she proceeds to tell her cousin's mom that I was touching her and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck, That's a stepdaddy nightmare for reals. And I was lost in my shit, dude. Like 2 days of her being in the fucking CPS fucking shit or whatever with sheriffs and all this stuff or whatever, saying I'm touching her and shit. I'm like, what the fuck, That's like the worst feeling ever. For one, I didn't do it, obviously, but at the same time, just being accused of that was so much. I had a year or so sober at that point, and man, I almost drank over that shit, I almost did. If anything would have made me go out, that would have been it right there, But the real thing is the second day, and they were gonna come arrest me, but because she just wasn't talking about that anymore. She was just talking about because I was a drunk, I was an alcoholic, so I would yell and that kind of stuff and get angry and I was short tempered and so I really wasn't that good a parent. Is what it boiled down to. And so she hated me and it's been a long road, but at the end of this interview, whatever, she told the truth and said that she was lying. So obviously I didn't go to jail or any of that because she was lying. You know what I mean? But in the meantime, I really thought about drinking 2 days in a row. I was on the phone with my sponsor, pacing back and forth and just freaking out. Like, what am I going to do? Because, I hate to say it, but, you're guilty till proven innocent. There ain't no innocent till proven guilty. That's bullshit. If we were innocent until you're proven guilty, you wouldn't have to fucking bail out. But here's the deal, man. I realized that one is too many, 1,000 is never enough. And I know that if I start drinking, and I don't even know if I would have liked it or not, but it wouldn't have been enough. And if I went to jail, I wouldn't be able to get any anyways. And so all the hard work I put in on my sobriety at that point would have been lost anyways, And I just really wasn't willing to give that up, So I didn't drink because I remembered where I came from, And I'd almost lost my old lady and my kids, stepdaughter and my son now, my family I have right now. She was done with my shit too, And like, it was bad because like we'd get in fights the night before or whatever. And I'd wake up all morning, babe, love you. And she'd be like, fuck you, motherfucker. I'm like, what? Like not even knowing what the hell, Apparently we had a big ass fight the night before or whatever. And once again, like the conventions, I don't remember shit. I don't remember none of it. You don't remember, do you? Remember what? Fuck you, motherfucker. And all this, So she was ready to leave me, man. And like I said, the way I was treating the kids and stuff. And obviously, our relationship was all fucked up because alcohol was all I cared about. That was my only real focus. And I had like the excuses for days, I gotta have it or else I'm gonna get sick or I'm gonna be dizzy and all this bullshit, And the irony of all that is those DTs is what they call that, is when I actually quit, wasn't shit. I had worse DTs in between getting the alcohol than I did actually getting off of alcohol. And luckily, I went to treatment and I changed my life and I barely hung on to the relationship. I got out and she was still ready to leave me because I was such an alcoholic and so introverted and selfish that I couldn't see what I was doing to the family. I couldn't see what I was doing with the kids. I couldn't see just how bad it really was. I was blinded in fucking beer goggles, they call it. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's almost 2 years sober now and I look back at all this and it's like, I just am not willing to give it up at all. Like, we'd be in meetings and stuff and hear of other people taking newcomer chips and stuff, and that, people I thought were like really strong in their sobriety, and all of a sudden now they're a newcomer, and man, how humbling is that, to check you in your own, don't get too comfortable, as the little cliches, I used to think they were stupid, all these stupid fucking cliches, fucking bullshit. But now that I actually am serious with a program and serious in my sobriety and all that, all these stupid cliches aren't so stupid anymore. They're fucking reality, man. This shit really comes to truth, like getting your life back, and shit comes back to you. I mean, you might not get that wife and that kid's back or whatever, depending on how far you were in your own personal story. But luckily, I was able to save my relationship. And now we're actually in a really good spot. We do parenting classes and all this kind of stuff and whatever, and I don't drink no matter what. Even through that, that was horrific, man. Like, I really was scared that I was going to go to jail and be that statistic, that I didn't do it, but yeah, sure, because you're already convicted at that point, you know what I mean? And whether you did or didn't, the plea bargain versus 30 years, so if you sign this, then you get this little time, but now you'd have to be a registered sex offender. All this kind of stuff is running through my head, and that's what made me almost want to drink, because I really didn't do it, like, what the fuck, And luckily she told the truth and said she was lying, but she thought that if you get rid of me, then daddy'd come home, mom and dad get back together, and then all of a sudden, like, even her mom was talking to her, like, what about Wilder? Wilder, that's Wilder's dad, and what happens when he's gone? Where, oh, well, my dad could just be his dad. It'd be kind of the same. She's an 8-year-old kid at that point, She don't know the difference. And she didn't know the story about her dad either, how he was a drug addict and he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and that's why he's not in her life, because he was supposed to go get evaluations and all this other stuff, whatever. But when we first got together, there was a lot of sexual stuff or whatever that this kid was portraying, and that's what started all this, and that's why he ended up, getting in trouble or not being able to be around. But she would never say anything at counseling or anything like that either, so there was nothing to convict him on. So, but he never did what he was supposed to do, and that's why it wasn't in her life. So to sum that story up, but she thought I would get rid of me and her real dad would come home, and that ain't the case. So now she understands that, he's a drug addict and he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and it has nothing to do with if I'm there or not. Mom and dad are never going to get back together again, And so that little fantasy of her thinking that is all gone now, and reality is reality, But it's funny because in this story I'm telling right now, is like, I think back in between my meeting my dad, and I always had these dreams, these fantasies, these hopes, these fucking, and like you trail off into somewhere thinking whatever, and daydreaming, and all that shit was, gone once he was, but it made me think, with her and her thinking that, where it took me back to that in between time when I was fantasizing having my dad around and stuff, It wasn't until way later when I had kids and all this that I found out that my dad was trying to be in my life, and that he was writing letters and all that my mom held all that shit from me for her own selfish reasons, really thinking he was going to take me, But the real thing is I missed out on my dad's side of the family and stuff. And like my grandma, he was going to take me to go meet her when I see him, but mom wouldn't let me go again when I met him. And then I finally meet up with my dad's side of the family and stuff. And grandma died like 6 months before that. So I was like, fuck, another thing I missed out on, all this stuff, man, compiled just all fuel for the fire, so to speak. I didn't ever really think about like, well, all this happened to me, so I'm going to go get loaded. It wasn't like that at all. Like, I just got loaded. And I didn't get loaded, and while I was high thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to think about this, or this is so detrimental, I got to get loaded over it. It was never like that. I just got fucked up. Always looking for some excuse. Some escape. Anything to get away from reality. I didn't want to deal with reality. Reality never did me any favors, So being in a fog and being loaded and all that was like a lot easier to deal with than the truth. Well, now the truth is because of all that, I've lost so much. Like I have all these kids and stuff, and it's funny because like the baby mamas talk shit or whatever and say they don't or whatever, but then like I said, I got older kids now, and the irony of it all is my first son, my second born first son is a parent too, and he's dealing with the same fucking shit I went through, the baby mama drama, and now him and I have a really good relationship because he can relate to where I'm coming from. Because baby mamas, oh, they're talking no shit, but yeah, fucking, you sure the fuck didn't help anything either. Like I wrote those letters trying to get a hold of you guys. I reached out. I was looking. I was trying. It wasn't until fucking Facebook and shit like that, social media stuff, that we finally found each other and stuff. Because, like I said, I moved in with those people who were slamming dope, and they kicked me out and threw all my shit away. So that was really hard, man. So not being able to find the kids, the baggage of the dad and the abusive stepdad and all this kind of stuff, man. Like, and oh yeah, and back when I was a kid, I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, but back when I was like almost 11, and right around the same time, or I was 11 at this point, I guess, I just found out about my dad and all this stuff, or whatever. And me and these friends of mine, we got in this like tomato fight with my grandma's tomatoes and throwing it against the trailer and whatever and all this crap, whatever. And we were joking, whatever, and one of them said a joke, and I said, "That's as old as my grandma, and she farts dust." And then this other kid smarted off and said, "Oh, well, that's why she's in the hospital." I lost my fucking shit. I went inside and I grabbed a knife. It happened to be my uncle's fillet knife or whatever, and I had this kid pinned on the fucking porch thing, a little metal porch door, the trailer. And so I had him pinned. Like, want to talk shit now, motherfucker? And swinging this knife at him and stuff. Well, he grabbed it, and I twisted and pulled it up and fucking cut him across here. I had 8 stitches here and 2 stitches on and a couple surface cuts. And he was like holding it, and it was like bleeding all over us. And, so we all panic. Oh, shit. So take him inside, and we put it in water, thinking whatever, we're fucking 11 years old, thinking that's going to help. Fuck no, dude. He was holding his hand. It was pumping out on his shirt and everything at that point, And apparently it hit a main artery or whatever right there and shit, too. So, paramedics came and all this, whatever. But back in 90, like 92 or something at that point, they, I didn't get charged or whatever. They just wanted me to go to counseling or some shit, And so I went to like 1 or 2 of them, and again, do whatever I wanted until fuck that shit. So I never went back, and that was that. But pissed off a lot of the friends around town and his friends especially, but we were all friends at that point before that, and then now all of a sudden I'm the asshole, and so they would chase me and whatever and try to fucking kick my ass and whatever. This one guy come over trying to do this little cry chop thing at me with his feet, try to kick me, and I just flipped him and fucking, because I was doing taekwondo at that time, and so I flipped him on his fucking face and then ran down the street because I really wasn't trying to fight and stuff like that or whatever. But so I moved from Arizona to Washington State, and like 3 months before I turned 14. And since I got picked on in Arizona, when I came up to Washington State, I became the bully. I was the bad kid, and like I said, I just wanted to smoke weed and drink, and we do these parties like there used to be different, like cruising down 82nd and all that kind of stuff back then. And there'd be all these parties and stuff, like tailgate parties, like Houston and Larry's, Dave Douglas Park, all this kind of stuff, right? Well, we'd all fill up this parking lots with cars and stuff, and I never had no money, but my mom moved to Arizona, and I was living with my sister, and then I ended up moving in with this other guy at 16, and so we would do all these parties and stuff, and I never had no money, but I always come back all kinds of fucked up, doing LSD, fucking cocaine, fucking whatever, it was a cross house, whatever, by that time, always weed and alcohol for sure. But I was living on my own or whatever, and I was on probation and all this, and they told me I was either going to go to a foster house or I can go back to my mom or whatever. So I said, give me a plane. So they gave me a plane ticket. I went back to Arizona, and that's when I ended up having my first kid and shit right after that, But it was always the party, man. The party. It's like I said, man, I never I never felt like I was running from anything. I never felt like I had to escape anything. I just never wanted to feel normal. My normality was, let's get loaded. How can I feel numb basically, and without really understanding, like I do now, that I was just running from all that pain, the trauma, the drama, for my life that happened to me. I was always trying to run from all that. So I ended up in treatment. I learned all this stuff or whatever. But then we're all going to keep in touch. We're all going to, whatever. So I set up this Zoom meeting, and I still have it. It's a ride free AA. It's an open AA ride free Wednesday meeting is what it's called. And 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock every Wednesday Pacific time, is this meeting. And so I had all these people from treatment, and then eventually I was like the only one there. And so I got in the Everything AA guide, and then in a guide from Vancouver too, which gave my meeting accessibility to other people besides people in treatment, because there's only like one or two other people that have stayed clean the whole time, like I have. And doing this meeting every Wednesday really keeps me in touch with my sobriety and my responsibility as an alcoholic recovering to be there for other people, to help them recover too, freely give back what was given to you, and service work and all that, getting a sponsor and working steps and doing service work and being involved and getting phone numbers and talking to people and all that kind of stuff is how I almost have 2 years now. April 29, 4/29/24 is my sobriety date now. And, it's funny, July 24, 99, no narcotics. 05, I quit smoking cigarettes, and now 4/29/24 from all the rest, And I feel like I'm actually living now, and like I like to shoot pool and stuff, like, and so I go to bars now. I don't recommend it for other recovering alcoholic addicts, but myself though, like, when I make myself, and when I make up my mind for myself, like, I run myself so ragged, and I go so far down the rabbit hole into my rock bottoms to the point where I finally quit. Once I quit, I'm fucking done. Like I said, I quit doing narcotics and still sold the shit for 5 years. I'd wear gloves and, give me your money, still like money, but I didn't do the drugs, and I was hardcore, and I was one of those guys, like, with the drugs or the alcohol, where people were like, I never thought you would get clean. I never thought you'd get sober, I was like the die hard, because I'm all in or not is what it is, So when I quit, I fucking quit, But that kid shit, that almost sent me out, man. Like, if anything, that almost sent me out. But luckily, she told the truth, and it all come out that she was just trying to get her daddy back, And I can sympathize for her, but it was pretty fucking scary for me for that situation, But I could totally sympathize for what she was going through because of my situation with my dad, And luckily it all come out okay, and I'm able to be there for her now, We're still together, we're still the same family and same mom, all that, And I'm able to be there for her. But then, like my other son I was talking about, that now he's going through the baby mama drama. Well, he ended up all strung out on meth and all that shit too, And from my history, I was able to be there for him too, because I was strung out and I went through all this shit, I heard the voices. I was paranoid. I was walking down the street in circles thinking they were after me and all that shit. And the fucked up thing is that they really were at that point. But at that point, and like how much of it was bullshit, how much of it was real, fuck, who knows? Those lines blur when you're fucking loaded, especially tweaked out, And but they did follow me all the way to California and stuff. And I used to fuck with them, man. I'd get all high and stuff. And you see the same faces. They do like these different beard, mustache changed cars, but it was all the same people, all the same cars, So you just learn to recognize their faces from, like, eyes and stuff, And so I'd get all high and I'd be out in the middle of fucking night and driving around and shit, and on a suspended license and all the bullshit, And I would fuck with them, and I'd take a left, take a right real quick. And next thing you know, there'd be all these cars, following me around and stuff. And I'd be all, hey, fuck you, fuck the police kind of shit, But back then it was fun and games because it was all a game, and I was loaded, and the reality of it all really wasn't reality. It was just my reality, But looking back now, man, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic addict, because I am there for my kids. I did do all this stuff, and I have experience that I can share with other people to help them in their sobriety and stuff, or help them understand, like with my son, He's got a little girl and a boy and stuff, and a psychotic baby mom, same shit I had, But the crazy bitches fuck the best. But let me tell you, they fuck you the best too, And so my own experiences, I'm able to share with other people and help them in their sobriety. And that's why I keep the Zoom meeting too, because it keeps me grounded in my recovery, keeps me solid, moving forward and working steps and realizing, you don't have to live that way, man. You don't have to run from shit, and you're never really running anyways, because as soon as you get sober up or as soon as you wake up, all that shit's still there. It never went anywhere, and that's why I didn't use with the child thing, because I'm still going to wake up wanting that shit and I'm not going to be able to get it. But then I throw away all the hard work I put in to get to that point. So I didn't, and I'm grateful I didn't. So I guess that's pretty much where I'm at, like I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic addict, and I like my Zoom meeting because it's open. Addiction's addiction to me, man, because I've experienced both sides of it. And now I'm experiencing the sober side of it. And I have a lot to offer as far as sobriety goes because I have had such an extensive history, I mean, there's obviously a whole lot of shit I ain't talking about because I don't think I got that much time. But the real thing is those are the main points of my life on why I did it and what I did and where I'm at now, And that's all I can say is if you're struggling, man, just think about where you came from, man. Like that's what keeps me going. It's like I know where I came from, and I know it wasn't pretty. At the time, you don't realize how fucked up shit really is, dude, until you have a chance to look back on it. And that's where I'm at now. Seeing other people come back and keeps you humble, man. I went a long ways, and then they're always like, the first year's the hardest. I'm like, yeah, if you're struggling, like those 10 months where I was hanging on it every fucking day, Now I don't do the day by day, watching the calendar and marking off X's like I'm gonna get out of jail or something, I don't do that shit no more. I just have dates and I just keep going. If I want to know how long I have it specifically, I look at my Everything AA app. It keeps track of it for me. I don't have to do the math. I don't have to look at the dates or nothing. I just look on there and it says I have the year and this many months and this many days or whatever, And that's enough for me because I am living for my future. I'm not stuck in my past. Being stuck in my past and hanging on to that shit got me loaded or drunk so many times. So that first year struggling, yeah, if you're still struggling, the chances are you might not be done. Unfortunately, I mean, not everybody wants to hear that shit, but that's reality, man. Like, I wasn't done either. I had those 10 months and I was hanging on so tight that I went back out. It took me 3 years to come back. And once I stopped after those 3 years, July 24th, 99, I realized that I just don't have another 3 years in me. I don't know. And so now I'm older and, 20 fucking 5-6 years later or whatever it's been now that I've been sober from narcotics, I look at the alcohol thing and I don't even want to chance it. Like, I've come so far, and like I said, I lost so much, including my license and all this other bullshit because of it, and damn near my family that I just finally got back a family that I might be able to actually be there the whole time. But between drugs and alcohol, man, a lot of my life was definitely fucked up and a blur. And like, a million excuses on why I needed to get it loaded, and whether it was to me or to whoever around me or whatever, man. But like I said, I'm grateful recovering alcoholic addict, and that's my story, man.